There are 5 types of printers that you should know for the A+ exams. The most important of those is the laser printer. So let's start with that. Laser printers can produce high quality text and graphics on cut sheets of paper. The bulk of laser printers print in black, but there are also color laser printers, which of course are more expensive. Laser printers have advantages over other types of printers, namely speed and print quality. As far as speed goes, a laser printer can print anywhere from 10 to 100 pages per minute, and that'll depend on the model and whether it's a color or a black and white laser printer. For print quality, a laser printer commonly prints at 600 dots per inch, DPI, which is considered to be letter quality and professional. But 1200 DPI and 2400 DPI resolution printers are also available. The laser printer has an in-depth laser print process, which we'll discuss in detail in an upcoming video. Maintenance of laser printers is vital. You should periodically inspect a laser printer and replace the toner cartridge if necessary. The toner cartridge usually slides into a compartment in the laser printer. So this is the toner cartridge right here. And instructions on how to insert it usually accompany the cartridge. But be cautious of a couple of things. One, toner can potentially spill or leak out of the cartridge. It's very messy and it's potentially hazardous. And 2, make sure you remove the protective tape strip from a new toner cartridge. It's there to prevent toner spill while the cartridge is in transit, but the printer won't be able to print if that tape is there. In general, when working with printers, keep them clean and use printer maintenance kits, and always refer to manufacturer's instructions. HP and other manufacturers offer maintenance kits that include items such as fusers, rollers, separation pads, and instructions on how to replace all these items. Manufacturers recommend that maintenance be done periodically, for example, every 200,000 pages printed. When you finish installing a maintenance kit, be sure to reset the maintenance counter. You should have a toner vacuum available as well for toner spills. Vacuum up any leftover residue. And printer maintenance can be broken down into the following basic categories. First, replace the toner cartridge. So if you start to see that your pages are getting dimmer and not as clear, it could be that you need to replace it. Also, apply the maintenance kit. Make sure that you install any fusers or rollers or separation pads that are necessary and reset the counter. Then calibrate the printer. And by that, you want to make sure that the printer is printing properly as far as horizontal and vertical. And also, if you have a color printer, you want to make sure that the colors are correct. And finally, clean the printer. And quite often you'll get a lot of toner buildup inside of the printer. So that's when that toner vacuum becomes essential once again. Laser printers are usually black and white, but there are also color laser printers which use separate cartridges. Quite often cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which are referenced as CMYK. C for cyan, a sort of blue, M for magenta, Y for yellow, and K for black. The K actually stands for key, but that's what that means. However, for color printing, inkjet printers are more economical. So let's talk about those for a moment. Inkjet printers are common in small offices, home offices, and for personal use. They can print documents, but more commonly print photographs and graphical type information in color. Most of the time, inkjet printers connect to a computer by way of USB or Wi-Fi. Unlike a laser printer, which, while that can connect by USB or Wi-Fi, oftentimes it'll be wired to the network by way of an RJ45 port. The inkjet process is fairly simple. The paper or other media is pulled into the printer and pulled into position by a roller and feeder mechanism. The print head, which you can't really see here, but it's underneath the lid, is located on a mechanical arm, which moves across the paper, which is assisted by a carriage and belt system. The print head then delivers black and colored ink from the ink cartridges as directed by the print driver, the software that runs the printer. At the end of the line, the paper or media is advanced and the print head reverses direction and continues to print, or it returns to the left margin and parks. And in printers that allow for duplexing, a duplexing assembly is required that refeeds the paper back into the printer for printing on the other side. When the page is complete, the paper or other media is ejected. In this case, we have a test page that's been printed out, and we can see the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black colors. So we know that this has been tested, and that was done on the on-screen display here. Most printers come with a test page functionality feature that you can get to from the menu on this operator control panel or on-screen display. Now, the components of the inkjet printer include the ink cartridges, the print head, a roller, a feeder, a duplexing assembly, a carriage, and a belt. So know those for the exam. And maintenance of an inkjet printer is often much simpler than with, say, a laser printer. You want to check the ink cartridges periodically by using the printer's on-screen display or operator control panel, if you will, or you could check that within Windows if possible. And you can also physically inspect the cartridges if necessary. If one or more cartridges are low, be prepared to replace them. Also, you can clean the heads of the cartridges, and you can do that with a 50-50 mix of isopropyl alcohol and water. Replace the cartridges if necessary. Be sure to calibrate the printer, and usually there is a calibration program as part of the test program within the printer, and you can check the calibration to make sure that colors are being printed within their boxes properly, and that images look correct, and that the colors are the right color. And also clear any jams that occur. That's part of maintenance as well. If you have a paper jam, then the printer will not be able to print. Next on the list is thermal printers. These produce text and images by heating specially coated paper. It's typical to see thermal printers used in point-of-sale systems, that's POS systems, also at gas station pumps. Thermal printers consist of the following parts. They have a thermal head. This generates the heat and takes care of printing to the paper. There's a platen. This is a rubber roller that feeds the paper past the print head. A spring, which applies pressure to the print head, which brings the print head into contact with the paper, and a circuit board. This controls the mechanism that moves the print head. To print, the special thermal paper is run through the feed assembly and then inserted between the thermal head and the platen. The printer sends current to the thermal head, which is the heating element, which in turn generates heat. The heat activates the thermosensitive coloring layer of the thermal paper, which becomes the image. Maintenance of a thermal printer includes inspecting the paper tray and replacing paper if necessary, cleaning the heating elements, and removing any debris that can be left behind by the thermal printing process. It's also important to store any extra heat-sensitive paper away from direct sunlight and, of course, away from heat. Next is the impact printer. Impact printers use force to transfer ink to paper. For example, a print head striking directly on the paper that's behind it, similar to an old typewriter. This type of printer is somewhat deprecated, but certain environments might still use it, such as auto repair centers or warehouses, or perhaps accounting departments. And types of impact printers include the daisy wheel and the dot matrix, which is shown here, which is what you should know for the exam. The paper is fed into the printer using a tractor feed mechanism, and many dot matrix printers use paper that has an extra perforated space with holes on each side that allow the paper to be fed into the printer. Dot matrix printers use a matrix of pins in the print head that work together to create characters instead of using a form letter. The print head that contains these pins strikes the ribbon, which in turn places the ink on the paper. This all happens right here, and the print head moves across as it needs to print additional characters. Print heads come as either 9 pins or 24 pins. The 24-pin version offers better quality, known as near letter quality, or NLQ. Dot matrix printers are loud and slow, but are inexpensive to maintain. If you do have to work on maintenance, you may have to replace the ribbon, replace the print head, or replace the paper. And finally on the list, we have 3D printing. With 3D printing, various materials, often plastic, are joined together to build a three-dimensional object, like you see here. It's done by designing the object on the computer with CAD software or slicing software, and ultimately exporting the appropriate files to the correct 3D printer. The technology is often used to create prototypes of products to be later manufactured in bulk. However, it could be used to actually create commercial products as well. Know that 3D printers use a special plastic filament or resin to create the 3D shapes. Many 3D printers can connect via USB or Wi-Fi and Ethernet, and these printers are controlled by a computer running an operating system such as Windows or Mac OS. The computer itself should meet the recommended requirements for the various design software, such as CAD or slicing software. Some manufacturers of 3D printers make their own software, and others use third-party programs. So be ready to install the different programs necessary and to even work with design templates, many of which are freely available on the internet. For maintenance of 3D printers, be ready to clean the filament nozzle here, clean the resin reservoir, and anywhere there's a supply or distribution of plastic or resin. Also check the platform, or the print bed, if you will. Check whether the fans are working, and check the axis and gear movement, and make sure that the printing nozzle is moving freely. Now, this is an open air device, so you might not actually have fans for this, but if it's a closed box device, you want to make sure that it is adequately ventilated. And also update firmware as necessary. New firmware updates for this device will allow it to print more and different things. So those are the 5 printers you should know for the exam.